First question, and building on what you just shared in your introduction, you've been running virtual events for a while. And so what has, obviously, yes, there's been a pandemic, video has come online as a core channel of communication, but what else have you found really changed over the past few years?
Well, as my good friend Tyler Paris likes to say, 2020 was like grade school and 2023 is like college. And what I mean by that is that you could get away with all sorts of stuff in 2020. You could have terrible backgrounds, crackly mics, all sorts of, scrambly video in 2020. Forget that you're on mute. And for the most part, people were like, oh, that's okay. But here in 2023, now people kind of like private chat each other and they're like, I can't believe the speaker can't figure out how to unmute themselves, right? And so the expectations, I think, are much higher. And I think that it's on two arenas too, Rachel. One of the things I've been looking at is we really need a lot of what we can do to make meetings better is just purely can be done without technology. It's how we actually run the meeting. And then the other half is how we use technology, which Rachel, I know, is a big technology fan. How do we use technology to make our meetings better? And I see both of those. And in my most recent program, Rachel, I actually had those separated. And now I'm really actually starting to combine both of them, like really advanced or high-end engaging non-technical techniques combined with really high-end technical.
I love a number of things you just shared, but the change in expectation, I think, is something that if people don't realize it, they need to, right? Like there was a level of leniency during the pandemic that was required because, it was so new and people didn't have a choice. There was no choice. You had to set up your computer in your closet if that's all you had, right? But now, as you said, like this channel, some people have really leaned in and become very sophisticated virtual sapiens, as I like to call them. But then a lot of people mistakenly, I think, continue to think that video is somehow a like second-class citizen, which couldn't be farther from the truth. So I'm glad you brought that up. And the other component that I think we'll get into more in a moment, but do you find that there's a little bit of an obsession with some of the technology around video when people are sometimes missing that, like the human skill development piece?
Yeah, although I'd rather them err on the side of some better technology because, not having the better technology can really hurt you. So here, let me give you one like this right here. Like I got a microphone today and it sounds simple, but when you meet somebody and it sounds like they're in their bathroom, right? Because they're using the default mic that's on their laptop, you got to listen to that for 30 to 60 minutes as opposed to this. I'm trying to do my best
radio
voice. That's right. So at least then it's pleasing. You don't want technology to hurt you, right? And that's one way that I see over and over again where technology hurts people. Then the second part is I got the chance to meet an author of an article on a PR website about how she really felt like virtual meetings were already broken before the pandemic because they were meetings that were already doing things that were wrong. And the worst part is that just virtual just really magnify it. So there's simple things like have an agenda, right? Greet people when they come in, other things like that. And then it gets on to like how to really facilitate the meeting. So here's one of my latest principles, Rachel, is this. In your next meeting, allocate at least half of the time for somebody else to talk than you. And it sounds simple, but let me tell you that 80% of the meetings that I attend don't do this. Right? Somebody thinks that because they have the mic and they're their host and they got to talk the whole time. Right? As opposed to the inverse is this. If Rachel's in my course and I ask her to answer a question, right? What's changed for you in the past few years, right? When she's answering me, it is impossible for her to be disengaged. Right? Because we're having a conversation. It's impossible for her to be texting somebody else without violating a whole bunch of social protocol and looking weird going, why is Rachel texting in the middle of a question when she's on stage?
Right.
So So I think that's one of the secrets is getting other people to talk, like actually really facilitating a great conversation as opposed to a one-way presentation that you could
Yeah.
have sent a video for.
Right, right, absolutely. And that facilitation skill, I think, is valuable, is especially valuable on virtual, but it's also just as needed and valuable in person. I think the other thing that I noticed was there's been this like glorification of the in-person meeting. And I'm like, no, people like also hate in-person meetings. Like they're also poorly run. So I think you're right. It's been like almost like a magnifying glass into some of the meeting best practices that we can hone just across the board.
Yeah, I can validate that because I did go to a conference that I was going to speak at, and
Uh-huh.
my speaking slot was at the last day, and so I watched through all the keynotes and all the breakouts, and it just the what my analysis or conclusion at the end of that conference is that in person needs engaging training too.
Totally. 100%.